Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. So, I'm sure you've got loads of questions about Shadowlands, and there's a lot of info floating out around there, but, well, much of it was split between various interviews, Q&A sessions, and even streamer chats. So today, we're going to bring together all of that esoteric stuff, all that split off stuff into one place, and I'll kick it off with narrative. Now, I'm going to do proper, full, deep speculation videos on a lot of this stuff, but, well, here's some of the new info. So first, it's been confirmed that Odin's Eye will play into the Shadowlands plot, and that the deal that he made was actually made on behalf of the jailer, so that's sure to have major implications on the story and potentially even on the nature of the Titans and the Keepers themselves. Now, speaking of the Titans, well, this was the first time that a Blizzard dev literally said that Argus is the Death Titan. Now, that's not a surprise, given that his datamine name was literally Death Titan, and that he's walking around with a giant scythe, but it was neat to hear. Now, on that, Blizzard talked about the nature of death and of true death, so if a human dies, they go to the Shadowlands. If a demon dies, they go back to the Twisting Nether. Now, if a demon dies in the Twisting Nether, then it experiences a true death. Now, their example was that a steward, sort of like a mob in Bastion, dies there, then they'll truly die, but their energy will go back into Bastion, and that energy will sort of be reborn eventually into a new steward. So to do a minor speculation on that, I think it's just painting a picture of the various realms, having their own types of beings, their own energy, and their own balance to maintain. Now, on a similar note, they talked about the state of the old gods whenever they die, saying that yes, the forms of Yogg-Saron and Cthulhu are dead, but their echoes are still experienced around the world, and basically teasing, well, if a demon goes to the Twisting Nether when it dies, where does an old god go? That's a pretty good question for them to tease, and it's one that they use to talk about the importance of the broad cosmology, and overall that does make sense, really, making sense of that cosmology chart, that's important to them, and it definitely seems like a lot of the future plot lines are going to be basically explaining the mechanics of the mythical. And I suppose on the topic of the mythical, well, they confirmed that the Jailer is a new character, and that the Jailer is the centerpiece villain of the Shadowlands expansion. Now, this confirms that it's not a character that we know, so it's not Hakar, it's not Argus, it's not Muzala, or any established character thus far. Now, this also does place Sylvanas as a clear villain, because, well, she's in league with a villain. Now, as for Sylvanas herself, well, her working with Varian and her ascension to Warchief, that was kind of all part of her long-term plan to get power with the Jailer, and we're going to see more explanations in this expansion. Now, guys, that's a clear retcon of Before the Storm. I mean, they're literally making up parts of this as they're going along here, because here's a quote from Before the Storm. "A curse upon Vol'jin and his soul. I should have stayed in the shadows where I could be effective without being interrogated, where I could do as I truly wished. She'd never wanted this, not really." That is what Sylvanas says about being Warchief. So yes, there's your daily dose of writing hackery. I mean, they're now even saying that this Jailer plotline actually started in Edge of Night. Of course, in Edge of Night, which I've recently read through in a lot of detail, I mean, it's not there at all, right? They're just recontextualizing older lore in order to tell the story that they want to do now. Now, of course, that is a bit weird when it goes against some of the character motivations of those old plot lines that have now been refactored and recontextualized, and I think this stuff is probably what's led to there being so many dislikes on the expansion reveal, just in not really feeling emotionally right in the context of the totality of the overall Warcraft lore and play experience. Anyway, some of those YouTube dislikes were probably from Tyrande. We know she dislikes Sylvanas, and Blizzard did confirm that Tyrande will play a major role in the Ardenweald storyline. Now, given how Ardenweald is a dark mirror of the Emerald Dream, and how she is the sort of dark avatar side of Elune, well, I've got to wonder if those connections are going to be explored a little bit more, and I wonder, are we going to learn more about Elune's true nature, the true nature of the dream? Maybe, is the Emerald Dream part of something wider? There's a lot they could cover there. Now, on the topic of Tyrande, Blizzard did confirm that her campaign in Darkshore was canonically a victory, with the same going for Stromgarde, and that it made sense because they were originally Alliance zones. Then finally, Blizzard have also said the Chronicle is canon, but that it's told from the Titans' perspective, so things could change and further context could be added. Now, this makes sense for some aspects of Chronicle, but less sense for other aspects of Chronicle. I mean, the Titans have been relatively uninvolved in Azeroth's more recent history, and many of their facilities went dark, so there's a lot of stuff they wouldn't know. They also weren't around to witness creation, but that is, accounted in Chronicle, so it kind of goes against the mission of Chronicle, like, unifying years of lore, but I think Blizzard probably now, more than they did then, want to explore the Warcraft cosmology, so you can see why they would make a change like this so clear. Oh, and then finally, actually, there is a connection between the Helm of Domination and the Shadowlands, more than we previously thought. This connection will be explored through the new Forge Master character who builds out our legendaries, so yeah, expect some form of major reveal there. Okay, with the lore clarifications done, let's move into the game. So, traveling around the Shadowlands is mostly how you would expect. There will be a taxi from Oribos to the zones, and a portal to Oribos. Now, the zones are not contiguous, so there may actually have to be loading screens between them, and as for flying, well, it's going to follow the Pathfinder model, and that's actually something that got a notable boo from the crowd in the Q&A panel. Now, as for the zones, well, they're going to be about the same size as the zones in the last few expansions, but the devs did say that Revendreth might be a little bit larger. Now, there's also going to be a special death effect if you actually die in the Shadowlands, and you'll probably have seen like the visual effect there in the BlizzCon gameplay streams. Then next on the topic of leveling, their goal is that 10 through 50 can be done in the expansion of your choice, but that you'd be able to swap around expansions if you want. And in order to, say, not make WoD the default for speed leveling, they are going to be balancing the leveling speeds. That said, though, it is going to be significantly faster than it is currently, and on the topic of the boost, well, they're still working out exactly how that is going to work. Okay, next let's cover some customization things. So Allied Race DKs are not getting new DK specific skins, but they are getting an Allied Race intro sequence from Bolvar, and that is instead of a new starting zone, so pretty much the norm for Allied Races, and they will start at level 10. Then Blizzard not planning any Night Warrior-like customizations for now, noting that the Covenant progression is the main focus. Now, on that, well, you're going to have 3 levels of Cloak upgrade, 3 levels of Mount, probably Tints. It sounds like you'll have Tints for all that as well, but it's kind of hard to confirm. You're also going to get variants of your Covenant ability. The example was the Ardenweald travel boost, having different animal forms, and they plan to do that for the other ones as well. Then, in line with the focus on Covenant rewards, we're not going to be seeing new spell effects for existing spells. That work is instead going into the new, I think, 48 Covenant spells, like the class spells, and then the 4 utility spells. So that's all unlockable stuff, but there are, of course, new default customization options. That includes, like, the new racial options for humans, the Wildhammer dwarves, things like that, and they're going to be unlocked by default. Now, there are no plans for Allied Races at launch, but I think that, like, we're getting things like the Wildhammer dwarves by default in terms of, like, the new customization options, so I think many player fantasies are going to be covered by that system. Now, then more broadly for armor stuff, they said that BFA involved them experimenting more with, like, 3D geometry on a core set, but that in Shadowlands they're going to be focusing on what they can do with the back slot a little bit more. Now, that's going to be building off the work that they put into the new Recruit a Friend rewards and the Rathian backpack that you'll be able to get in 8.3. Okay, with that covered, let's do a few things on itemization and gameplay rewards. So, you are going to be able to choose what slot your legendary goes in, but we should know that that system, as well as, I mean, basically all of itemization, it's extremely work in progress. According to Preach's post-BlizzCon stream, the feeling he got was that the devs just have not made those decisions yet, and that they're basically waiting to see how Corrupted Gear is going to pan out. So, yeah, your feedback in Corrupted Gear is extremely important. Indeed, thinking back to another interview, there they said that they can't confirm anything on Titan Forging, but they said that there will be something. So again, if you've got feedback, if you don't like Corrupted Gear, please give your feedback. Now, on Legendaries, well, they said that they want them to have Legion-like effects that actually matter for your rotation, so I think that, in combination with you choosing your slot, and, you know, you actually choosing the effects you put in it, means that those legendaries could be a really good gameplay system, but again, it's all very work in progress at this stage. Now, if I was to move over to, like, Covenants from a progression, you know, perspective, like, say, with the soulbinds and stuff, again, it is super clear that it is just very early in development from a systems perspective, and that basically a lot of stuff could change. I mean, we barely know anything about how itemization broadly in this expansion will differ from BFA, other than us being fairly sure they'll try a few experiments, so we'll just have to wait and see there. Now, before we move on, let's just clear up some more gameplay topics. They confirmed that a small amount of anima will be needed per week in order to stay competitive, but that it will be a small amount. Past that, any additional anima goes into cosmetic progression, so that sounds good to me. Now, there will be catch-up, it's currently TBD. Ian gave an example of a world quest giving you a talent point as a form of catch-up, but basically the point is there'll be no diminishing return system that both crushes the impact of your past work while also lessening the reward of your future work, so sounds good to me. And then finally, on the topic of, like, balancing things, yeah, they do intend for there to be like a Mythic plus 10 run per week and a good shot at Torghast per week, and that's kind of what they want to do in terms of, like, the feeling of mandatory content from those two systems. Then just finishing up the itemization topic, they mentioned that sockets and benthic gear were a mistake that they caught too late, and they couldn't remove it. Now, why they could not have, a few days after launch, just stop the sockets from generating, and then remove them from gear before Mythic kicked off, I don't know. I mean, that was a massive balance problem, and Ian actually did say that sockets and secondaries are currently too powerful. But of course, he's been saying that since Warlords of Draenor, and it's almost always remained the case, so I'm going to need to see more progress on that. Now, they also mentioned that they've heard the feedback on personal loot and item level based trade restrictions, but they've got no updates. Suffice to say, I hope they kill that ASAP. Now, they're also discussing the role of bonus rolls in this expansion, and they seem to suggest they could interact with the weekly chest system, and basically that they can't say exactly what it is, but that their goal is to give people more choice and agency. So okay, that's the interesting itemization stuff covered. They didn't really say much in classes past what we covered in our other coverage and on the channel. They're clearly again just very early in their systems development. Now, Covenants did have a little bit more. They said that the sanctums will be like the class order hall, so a general hangout but not a capital city replacement. Then also options are being considered for the mission table. They've done it for 3 years. They're seeing what they can do, but they've got nothing to report on. Overall, they said they view Covenants as something to build on through the expansion with new patches, bringing new campaign stages and things like that, and that systemically they don't want to add a new essence-like layer on top of it, but they are down for a bit of horizontal progression in the form of more soulbinds, so more options, and maybe some vertical progression, which I would assume would mean the deepening of existing soulbinds, but the core there is just no new system bolt-ons, that's kind of their goal. Now, the Covenants also are going to tie into Torghast a little bit more, with there being boons that interact with the Covenant-wide abilities, as well as some problems that are solved by those abilities. So, with that, let's wrap up with a few misc items. They are going to update World of Warcraft's in-game guild finding options, which sounds great, but for those who want to invite their former enemies while you're out of luck, as faction restrictions are not going to be opening up anytime soon. They are, though, planning to connect more realms, which I think is a pretty good thing. Then finally, we've heard a few updates on tools development. So they've basically improved texturing and lighting, and they're now able to do stained glass window effects, which of course will tie into Revendreth. Now, we've also heard that they're playing around with ray tracing in the office, and we don't know if it'll make it into the game. They were not committal on that, but if it did, I mean, yeah, I'd expect more compelling lighting, and I mean, I would be surprised if it made it in, but I think it would be really cool for a top-end option. I mean, having that be active and, say, spell abilities would be, I mean, very cool, but seemingly incredibly taxing. But if you just look at what ray tracing has been able to do for a game like, say, Minecraft, and just how gorgeous it looks even with default textures, yeah, a little bit of lighting is very good. In fact, I'd say that high-quality lighting is probably the most important graphical effect if you really want to increase your fidelity, and if they can sort of use that to aid in stylization, it would be very interesting indeed. I mean, you can go to, 4K, 8K, all of that stuff, but really, it's stuff like lighting and atmosphere that really helps sell a scene. So if RTX could do that, or, whatever ray tracing implementation they go with, then, yeah, sure, that would be pretty cool. But anyway, there you go. That's the big, collection of tidbits from the Shadowlands. Everything from all the various interviews that so many outlets have done. There'll be links to the source interviews down below, by the way. And, I mean, that should be you caught up with just about everything. In terms of future content, there's a lot of lore to get into. I mean, just the stuff I covered in the first half of this video, the implications of so much of that. I mean, they really are pretty darn big. So, yeah, I'll do content on that. I will probably do just what I'm feeling, a sort of things I'm hyped for and not hyped for video. I think it'll be worth getting some of that out there. A little bit of, the stuff that's genuinely exciting, but also the criticisms, because it is important to do those early. But, yeah, let me know what you're thinking about Shadowlands now that you know all of this. And, yeah, I suppose with that, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.